All right, everyone, welcome. Today, we're going to take a journey back in time into the philosophical world that really set the stage for the New Testament. Now, for us, as people preparing for ministry, this isn't just some dusty old history lesson. Think of it as understanding the very soil where the seeds of the early church were planted. So, let's dig in. This was the question on everyone's mind. You have to imagine, after Alexander the Great's empire crumbled, everything felt uncertain. The old ways of life, the stability of the Greek city-state, it was all gone. Political chaos was the new normal, and those big grand ideas from Plato and Aristotle, they suddenly felt a little out of touch. People were desperately looking for something personal, a practical guide for how to find some peace when the world around them was just spinning out of control. So one of the first big answers to this crisis comes from a guy named Epicurus. And his solution, well, it was pretty radical. He basically said, stop trying to fix the chaotic world out there. Instead, just withdraw, pull back. He offered a path that was all about managing your own inner world, your own experience of life. Now, when you and I hear the word Epicurean today, we picture someone who loves fancy food, expensive wine, a life of luxury, right? Well, that is a total misunderstanding of what Epicurus was actually teaching. For him, the greatest pleasure wasn't about indulgence. It was about tranquility. He had a special word for it, ataraxia. It's this profound sense of peace you get when you're free from physical pain and, maybe even more importantly, free from mental and emotional turmoil.
So how do you get to this peaceful state? Well, Epicurus went right for the jugular. He tried to dismantle the two biggest fears that plague humanity, the fear of what the gods might do to you and the fear of death. He argued that the whole world is just made of atoms and empty space. Sure, gods might exist, he'd say, but they're off in their own blissful world and couldn't be bothered with us. And death? It's nothing to be scared of. It's just the end of feeling anything. You won't be there to experience it, so why waste your life worrying about it? If you could conquer those two fears, he thought, you could find real peace.
Okay, so if the goal is the special kind of pleasure, this tranquility, how do you get it? Not by going wild, not through excess. No, Epicurus said the key was prudence, just good old practical wisdom. He taught that a wise person learns to enjoy the simple things, good friends, a quiet moment of thought, maybe just some bread and water. The idea was to live a quiet life, far away from the stress and ambition of politics and public life.
But not everyone was buying this idea of just checking out from society. The biggest rival philosophy, Stoicism, came along and offered a totally different way. The Stoics looked at that exact same chaotic world and said, no, don't run from it, engage it, face it with virtue, with a powerful sense of duty, and let reason be your guide.
And at the very center of Stoic thought is this incredible concept, the Logos. For them, the Logos was this divine, rational fire, this intelligent principle that orders the entire universe. So to live a good life, a virtuous life, meant living in perfect harmony with this cosmic reason. Now wait a second. As students of the Bible, does that word logos sound familiar? Of course it does. Think about the first verse of John's Gospel. The early Christians took this powerful philosophical term that everyone knew, and they did something amazing. They redefined it in the person of Jesus Christ. That's a powerful connection, right?
And just look at the incredible reach of Stoicism. This wasn't some niche philosophy for academics. It was for everybody. You had Seneca, who was a top advisor to the crazy Emperor Nero. You had Epictetus, a man who started his life as a slave. And you even had Marcus Aurelius, the Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world. From the bottom of society to the very top, people found something compelling in Stoicism.
This quote from Marcus Aurelius really gets to the heart of what the Stoics were all about. He's basically saying, look, maybe there's a God, a providence, guiding everything. If so, live a life worthy of that. But what if it's all just random chaos? Well, even then, don't despair. Be content, because inside of you, you have a mind, a ruling intelligence, and that is the one thing no one can take from you. The goal is always inner calm, rational self-control, no matter what kind of storm is raging outside. And here it is, our direct connection to ministry. This wasn't happening in a vacuum. Remember in Acts chapter 17, when Paul goes to the Areopagus in Athens? Who's in the crowd? Who is he debating with? The Bible tells us, Epicurean and Stoic philosophers. The Apostle Paul himself was standing there, face to face with these worldviews, engaging them, finding common ground, and then challenging them with the radical, game-changing truth of the resurrection. Okay, but not every philosophy offered a big, tidy system for living. There were a couple of other schools of thought that were basically the great challengers of their day. They either said you can't really know anything for sure, so stop trying, or they just radically rejected the whole society that was asking these questions in the first place.
So first, you have the skeptics. And interestingly, they wanted the same thing the Epicureans did, that state of ataraxia, of being totally unbothered. But their method was different. They said the path to peace was through apoche, which means a total suspension of judgment. Their thinking was, for every single argument, there's an equally good counterargument. So, since you can never be absolutely sure, the only truly wise thing to do is to just not decide. Peace for them came from being able to honestly say, you know what, I don't know.
There's this fantastic story about Pyrrho, the founder of skepticism, that just perfectly illustrates this. He's on a ship, a massive storm hits, and everyone is panicking, right? But Pyrrho is just completely calm, and he points over to a little pig on the deck that was just happily eating its food, not bothered in the slightest by the waves and the wind. He turned to the others and said, "That is the state a wise man should be in, totally unperturbed." And then you've got the cynics. Oh man, these guys were the ultimate rebels of the ancient world. Their name actually comes from the Greek word for dog, kion, because they thought we should live like dogs. Seriously. They believed true happiness was found by throwing out all the silly social conventions, money, fame, reputation, even basic politeness, and just living as simply and naturally as possible. The most famous cynic, Diogenes, was basically a master of street theater. This story about him is legendary. He would walk through the crowded markets of Athens in the middle of the day, holding up a lit lamp. And when people would stop him and ask, "Diogenes, what are you doing?" he'd look them in the eye and say, "I am looking for an honest man." Wow, what a powerful, stinging critique of all the hypocrisy and greed he saw in the society around him. Okay, so we've had a quick tour of these ancient philosophies. Fascinating stuff, right? But here's the multi-million naira question. Why does any of this matter to you, right here, right now, as you're preparing for ministry in the 21st century? It matters because these philosophies never really died. They are alive and well all around us. They're just wearing modern clothes. So let's ask that question directly. I want you to start thinking of these ancient schools as prototypes, as the original blueprints for the worldviews you're going to encounter every single day in your churches and communities. The deep questions haven't changed. People are still searching for meaning, for peace, for a guide on how to live, and the answers they're finding often sound a lot like these ancient paths. Let's just connect the dots. That old Epicurean desire for a pain-free life, that's the engine of our modern consumer culture, isn't it? The idea that happiness is found in comfort and getting more stuff. And Stoicism? It's everywhere. It's in the secular self-help books, the mindfulness apps, that whole power of positive thinking movement that says you can control your own destiny with your mind. Skepticism is the very air that postmodernism breathes, that deep-seated distrust of anyone who claims to have absolute truth. And cynicism, you see its spirit in all sorts of countercultural movements and in the widespread distrust and rejection of big institutions, whether it's government or even the church. So we're going to end with this challenge, and it's a big one. As you prepare to go out and minister, you need to realize you will be talking to modern-day Epicureans, Stoics, skeptics, and cynics every single week. Understanding their search, what they're really looking for underneath it all, that is the key to connecting with them. So the final question for you isn't academic. It's deeply pastoral, it's missional. Knowing these mindsets, how are you going to articulate the truly unique, the compelling, the life-changing hope that can only be found in the gospel of Jesus Christ?